I have always been a big fan of audiobooks. I think the tradition of storytelling originally was oral. People would sit around campfires hundreds, thousands of years ago and share stories. I was very happy to learn that Toby Stephens was going to be recording the audiobook version of Carte Blanche. Of course, he was the fantastic villain, Gustav Graves, in Die Another Day. Largely because one gets into a Bond mindset. It's kind of hard to explain, but when I was writing the book, I read all of the original Ian Fleming books and saw several of the movies, and I found myself thinking the way a British secret agent would think, and thinking the way my villain would think. And to know that Toby was going to be reading this part, I knew that he would have his finger on the pulse of a Bond type of novel. When a novel like Carte Blanche is read by someone like Toby Stephens, a brilliant actor as well as a wonderful reader, it enhances the story in many ways, and particularly a novel like Carte Blanche, in which I have been very careful to craft dialogue and descriptions that I think will bring the story to life. Much of the story takes place in foreign countries, and I spent a lot of time making sure I had the dialect and the construction of the sentences correct to take the readers into that experience. And the audiobook version, I think, will enhance the reader's experience of the ultimate Carte Blanche.
His hand on the dead man's throttle, the driver of the Serbian rail diesel felt the thrill he always did on this particular stretch of railway, heading north from Belgrade and approaching Novi Sad. This was the route of the famed Arlberg Orient Express, which ran from Greece through Belgrade and points north from the 1930s until the 1960s. Of course, he was not piloting a glistening Pacific 231 steam locomotive, towing elegant mahogany and brass dining cars, suites and sleepers, where passengers floated upon vapors of luxury and anticipation. He commanded a battered old thing from America that tugged behind it a string of more or less dependable rolling stock, packed snugly with mundane cargo. But still, he felt the thrill of history in every vista that the journey offered, especially as they approached the river, his river. And yet he was ill at ease. Among the wagons bound for Budapest, containing coal, scrap metal, consumer products, and timber, there was one that worried him greatly. It was loaded with drums of MIC, methyl isocyanate, to be used in Hungary in the manufacture of rubber. The driver, a round, balding man in a well-worn cap and stained overalls, had been briefed at length about this deadly chemical by his supervisor and some idiot from the Serbian Safety and Well-being Transportation Oversight Ministry. Some years ago, this substance had killed 8,000 people in Bhopal, India, within a few days of a leak from a manufacturing plant there. He'd acknowledged the danger his cargo presented, but a veteran railway man and union member, he'd asked, "What does that mean for the journey to Budapest, specifically?" The boss and the bureaucrat had regarded each other with the eyes of officialdom, and, after a pause, settled for, "Just be very careful." The lights of Novi Sad, Serbia's second-largest city, began to coalesce in the distance, and ahead in the encroaching evening the Danube appeared as a pale stripe. In history and in music, the river was celebrated. In reality, it was brown, undramatic, and home to barges and tankers, not candle-lit vessels filled with lovers and Viennese orchestras, or not here at least. Still, it was the Danube, an icon of Balkan pride, and the railwayman's chest always swelled as he took his train over the bridge. His river. He peered through the speckled windscreen and inspected the track before him in the headlight of the General Electric diesel. Nothing to be concerned about. There were 8 notch positions on the throttle, number 1 being the lowest. He was presently at 5, and he eased back to 3 to slow the train as it entered a series of turns. The 4,000 horsepower engine grew softer as it cut back the voltage to the traction motors. As the cars entered the straight section to the bridge, the driver shifted up to notch 5 again, and then 6. The engine pulsed louder and faster, and there came a series of sharp clangs from behind. The sound was, the driver knew, simply the couplings between wagons protesting at the change in speed, a minor cacophony he'd heard 1,000 times in his job. But his imagination told him the noise was the metal containers of the deadly chemical in car number 3 jostling against each other, at risk of spewing forth their poison. Nonsense, he told himself, and concentrated on keeping the speed steady. Then, for no reason at all, except that it made him feel better, he tugged at the air horn.